Hi everyone, welcome to the series From Exhausted to Excited. In this series, we are going to have multiple discussions in the form of multiple videos where we are going to break down what exactly is causing you exhaustion in different areas of your life and how can we get your ambition and excitement back towards your life. And today we are going to have a discussion on a topic that I have helped many clients with, and I still tend to get these questions in one form or the other, which is why do I feel exhausted even though I'm not technically working? Or why am I feeling so exhausted even if I'm doing very little amount of work? Why am I so exhausted even though other people are doing the same kind of work but they seem energetic all the time? Why am I so exhausted even if my work is simple and it is doable, yet I just don't feel the need to do it. I don't have any motivation to do it, and I just feel this tiredness all the time, or I get this feeling of I just don't want to do anything. Right. So today we are going to break down this particular topic in detail. Now, if you see me looking down, it is just me looking down at my notes so that I do not forget anything because I am a forgetful person. Okay. Now let's start. Now, if I ask you what does exhaustion really mean to you, what would you tell me? Often whenever I ask people, how would you define exhaustion, or how would you tell me that you are exhausted, like according to you, what has to happen in someone's life for them to feel exhausted? And a common answer I hear is that they have done a lot of work, or they're doing a lot of work and they're not taking rest, and uh, they are tired and they keep on working on top of it even if they are tired, so there are no breaks in between and stuff like that, right? And this is a very common definition that we learn of physical exhaustion, right? Because as a society, we tend to only acknowledge the things that are visible to us, right? For example, if somebody has a fracture, we go and tell them go to a doctor, don't wait it out, it can get worse. But when somebody is struggling with anxiety, when somebody is struggling with depression, when somebody is struggling with a really horrible relationship with themselves, or they are struggling with attachment issues, we just tell them to suck it up, or we just tell them, oh, you know what, you're thinking too much, right? Imagine saying that to somebody who has had an accident. You would not do that. Why? Because you acknowledge the pain when you see it, right? The thing with issues that go on inside of us is that we don't really acknowledge the intensity of them just because it is not visible to us. And that is why it is so important to talk about it, right? And that is why we have this series now. So, you know, technically, when somebody has had a really long day, or when somebody has, let's say, come from a really long work trip, or let's say somebody was engaged in deep cleaning of their room, whatever, right? We see them physically exhausted and we tell them that, just take some rest and, do whatever it takes to recharge your body. But the thing is that exhaustion does not just come from physical work. There are two kinds of exhaustion. One is an active exhaustion, and another one is a passive exhaustion. Okay. Now, active exhaustion is exhaustion that comes from activities that you are doing on a daily basis, right? So, for example, let's say if I'm having an argument with you, right? So let's say you and I are friends, and I'm having an argument with you. That argument is going to exhaust me, right? So that is an active exhaustion. Now, active exhaustion can be both physical or mental and emotional. For example, physical exhaustion could be, let's say, I spend 2 hours every single day cooking for everybody in my family. That is an active exhaustion that's happening every single day. Or let's say every single day I'm having an argument with my mother. That is an active exhaustion that is happening every single day. Another kind of exhaustion is the exhaustion that is passive in nature, which is kind of something that goes on in the background that you are not even aware of, that it is taking your energy. Now, another thing that I want to mention here is the difference between visible exhaustion and invisible exhaustion. See, physical exhaustion is something that is visible, right? Like, for example, if you see me, carrying a 40 kg suitcase on my head, you are going to acknowledge that Riyanshi is carrying a lot of burden. But if I am carrying a lot of my unfulfilled expectations and other people's expectations, and the conflict I'm having with my partner, the conflict I'm having with my parents, my money trauma, my childhood trauma, that those are things that is not visible to you, right? So because you don't see it, you may never realize that I do need help, right? That I do need to put it down. If I'm carrying a 40 kg suitcase and I tell you that, you know what, I will carry this everywhere, you're going to tell me, are you crazy, Riyanshi? Put it down or take help to put it down. Let's say if I were to tell you that I don't know how to put it down, what will you tell me? That, you know what, let me help you out. Or, you know what, I think you should take some help to put it down. Or let's do something about it. But when that burden is mental and emotional in nature, which is what makes it invisible, you may never know. And because you also don't acknowledge it, and we live in a society where we don't acknowledge the things that we cannot see, even I may not acknowledge that I'm carrying it, but I can feel the exhaustion of it, right? Just the way I can feel the exhaustion of a 40 kg suitcase on my head, I can also every single day, no matter if I acknowledge it or not, no matter if I, acknowledge that this exists or not, I can still feel the exhaustion of it. So exhaustion is not just physical. Exhaustion is also mental and emotional. It is just that as a society, we only acknowledge we only acknowledge things that is visible to us, right? So exhaustion can also be mental and emotional nature. And let me tell you that all of them suck the same amount of energy. If you think that you are going to clean for 2 hours and it is going to, take up some energy of your day, and you had an argument, let's say, with your partner, which went unresolved and somehow it will not take up energy, then you are wrong, right? Energy is used up in any kind of work that you're doing, be it physical, mental, or emotional. It is just that we only acknowledge the physical work, right? So if I'm cooking, if I'm driving, if I'm carrying a 40 kg suitcase, that is physical work, right? That you can see that is taking up my energy. But the arguments that I'm having, the anxiety that I'm dealing with of unfulfilled expectations of people around me, the stress that I'm dealing with that I'm not good enough, the self-worth issues that I deal with every single day, you can't see it. Okay. I can't see it either, which means that it is not tangible, right? I can't touch it. I can't feel it. It is not tangible. Does not mean that it does not take up my energy. It takes up the same amount of energy or even more. Which brings me to the types of exhaustion that we were discussing, which is active and passive, right? So exhaustion is of two kinds. Active exhaustion and passive exhaustion. Active exhaustion is happening on a daily basis due to the ongoing activities that is going on in your life, right? Again, both physical or mental or emotional. For example, you had a fight with somebody, that is going to lead to emotional exhaustion. Let's say you are overthinking about something today, that is going to lead to mental exhaustion. Let's say that you decide that I'm going to cook for 25 people today, that is going to lead to physical, mental, and emotional exhaustion, all three of them, right? That is active exhaustion. Now, that exhaustion in itself can still be something that you understand, that, you know what, I had a fight with my partner today and that's why I'm feeling a bit tired. I mean, even this, a lot of people don't really acknowledge. But let's say that you do for a moment. Another kind of exhaustion is the passive exhaustion that keeps on going on and on and on at the back of your mind, right? This is a result of the thoughts and emotions that you do not have control over, right? So, for example, let's say that I am somebody who has experienced a lot of childhood trauma because of which I have self-worth issues. Like, I don't consider myself worthy, right? Or I tie my worth to how much money I'm making, or how am I doing in my career, or whether people validate me or not, for example. Now, this is a problem that I am not solving for myself, right? Because let's say I have not done my inner work. But that does not mean that this problem is not affecting me on a daily basis. Every single day I wake up and I ask myself, oh my God, what is the point of, waking up? I'm not doing well in my career. Or every single time I meet somebody or talk to somebody, I think that this person is judging me. This person is doing this person is doing that. This is always going on at the back of my mind, right? Or for example, let's say I'm an anxious person, right? And anytime somebody asks me to make a decision, or anytime I have to plan something in life, I'm always exhausted. I'm always anxious about it. For example, let's say I have to go on a vacation next month, and every single day I'm anxious. Oh my God, I don't know how it will go. I have to pack this, I have to pack that. So even though this is not something that I'm choosing to actively think about, it is going on in my head, right? Like a circle, like an alarm. And that is why when it comes to people who overthink, also overthinkers, an alarm is always going on, a thought is always going on in the back of their mind. Just because you don't acknowledge it does not mean that it is not sucking up your energy. It is. It is just that it is passive in nature right now. Passive meaning that you have not brought it to the surface as something that you can work on, right? Now, some signs of passive exhaustion is that something is always going on in your mind, right? Or that for no reason you just keep feeling tired. Like, even though you have slept for 10 hours, right? There is nothing stressful that's happening. You still feel very tired. Anytime you have to plan something, you suddenly feel exhausted. Or anytime some change is happening, you suddenly start feeling exhausted for no reason, right? Exhaustion comes very easily to you, even though you cannot attribute it to something that is happening actively. Exhaustion still comes in. That these are signs of passive exhaustion, which is something that is going on in your subconscious mind, but you are not acknowledging it, right? That is passive exhaustion. The most dangerous kind is passive invisible exhaustion that you don't acknowledge. this is where most amount of exhaustion is actually stored. A lot of times people struggle with a lot of trauma wounds they're carrying, problems they're carrying, that they are not actually resolving. Like they're not actually looking to resolve, and they keep on hoping and thinking that it will go away with time. Or if I distract myself, it will not come up. Or, if I forget about it, if I sleep it off, if I take a vacation, it'll go away. I've had a lot of people in my consultation calls that have told me that, Reanshi, I'm meditating, still it is not happening. I went on a vacation, still, this is coming back. I changed my job, still this is happening. I tried to do this, that, instead of actually solving the problem. Okay. For example, if your problem is that you have a very fearful relationship with money, for example, no amount of vacation is going to fix it. The moment you come back from the vacation, right, when you're done distracting yourself, the exhaustion will come back again. Or for example, let's say your exhaustion is coming from a lot of people pleasing that you're doing, right? The moment you go back into the environment where your people pleasing tendencies get activated in front of certain people, the exhaustion will come back again. So it is very important to understand that the exhaustion does not go away just because you distract yourself or you decide that I'm going to meditate it away. It only goes away when you solve for it, right? Now, let's talk about the passive exhaustion a little bit more, right? So passive exhaustion comes from three places: emotional, mental, and trauma wounds. Now, emotional exhaustion is usually when there are certain emotions that you're experiencing that kind of suck your energy, right? These are low vibrational emotions. For example, fear, anger, jealousy, envy, feeling depressed, feeling hopeless. These are emotions that suck the most amount of your energy. So if you are feeling these emotions, let's say 70 to 80% of the time during a day, or 60% of the time during a day, it is bound to happen that you're going to feel very tired and exhausted. Because even though you may actively be just sleeping on the bed all day long, but because these are the emotions that are dominant in your body, they're sucking up a lot of energy. Because your body is wired to find a solution for something that it considers a problem. And when you are feeling these emotions, your body considers these emotions a threat because they make you feel uncomfortable. So it is trying to find a solution in the background. Obviously, it's not able to find it, but it is trying. So it sucks up a lot of your energy, right? Second is the mental exhaustion. Mental exhaustion happens due to your thoughts. So, for example, let's say the most dominant thought in your mind during the day is always around some sort of a problem. This is not happening. That is not happening. How will I handle this? How will I handle that? uh, Life is not working out for me, this is not working out for me. So again, right, when most of the thoughts that you have are always around reminding you of a problem that exists in your life, it is going to suck up a lot of energy. Because again, as human beings, we are survivors of the highest order. At any point of time, if your body senses, either through external source or through internally, that it has a problem, it will jump on finding a solution. The problem is that when you are somebody who has not done your inner work, or somebody who has hit a ceiling in their life where you are not able to evolve from where you are, your mind keeps on running in circles trying to find a solution for a problem that you don't know how to find. For example, let's say if I have a fearful relationship with money, I understand the problem. I understand that I am very scared of talking about money. I am scared that I will never be able to make enough money. I'm always scared that financially I'm not safe. I understand and acknowledge the problem, but I don't know how to solve for it. So every single day my mind is trying to find a solution. Every single day it's going on and on, it's sucking up my energy, right? That goes with emotions also that you don't know how to process. For example, let's say you are feeling angry at a relative of yours who insulted you. Now intellectually you understand that I don't have to take them seriously, or I don't have to listen to them, or this person does not know my truth and stuff like that. But you don't know how to process that complex emotion. You don't know how to process your anger. You don't know how to process the fact that you feel guilty that you did not take a stand for yourself. You don't know how to process the fact that why did I allow this person to speak to me this way? So intellectually that I don't want to feel this way, I don't want to think this way, but because you have not come to a solution yet, it goes on and on and on in your head, and it keeps on sucking up your energy. This is what passive exhaustion is, right? When you are not able to find a solution, it keeps on going on and on. It keeps on sucking up your energy. Most people who tend to think that, I'm not really working a lot yet, I feel exhausted, or I look at other people, they're also doing the same amount of work as me, yet they're far more energetic. It's because they're not carrying the invisible burden that you are carrying, right? You can't look at somebody's life just based on what is happening in the physical reality, right? For example, let's say that you and I work the same hours during a day. And let's say that you are somebody who's also planning a meal for four people every single day. You are cooking also. And you are somebody who's also thinking about the medication that you have to buy for your parents. And you are also driving somebody here and there. Now, technically, it may not look like very hard tasks on a daily basis. But my energy is not going there. Your energy is going there. So even though we may work the same hours of day, you may find yourself very exhausted versus I might not. Or for example, let's say if you're in a toxic relationship, right? And all your energy goes into, thinking about that only. How will I handle this? How will I handle that? So your energy is going there also, right? You're trying to solve a problem in your head that I'm not. So I may have more capacity than you purely because I don't have the invisible problems that you're battling with. So exhaustion, as I said, does not just come from visible and active problems. It also comes from passive and invisible problems. Now, the third source and the most underrated and under-recognized source of exhaustion that is something that comes from unhealed childhood trauma wounds. Now, if you would like to understand what childhood trauma wounds are, I have done like a lot of boot camps on this. The best one to watch is go and watch the Healing Childhood Trauma Boot Camp. It is pinned in the feature section of my profile. You will understand the types of childhood trauma, which ones are you carrying, and what is the part to healing them, right? So, when you have childhood trauma wounds, what tends to happen is that they lead to coping mechanisms. Okay, they lead to coping mechanisms, and these coping mechanisms suck the most amount of energy from you, and you don't even know that you're indulging in them, right? You may not even know that this is something that is happening to me. For example, let's say that you have the overachiever's trauma wound. Okay, the overachiever's trauma wound is when you are somebody who was basically always shown respect and love growing up when you were achieving something or when you were performing, right? So now you tie your self-worth to how much you are doing. Maybe your self-worth is tied to validation, money, awards, title, basically how much I can produce, right? How much I can produce so that people can see that this is the output I'm creating, right? So when you have that kind of wound, your coping mechanism would always be to perform. So anytime, let's say somebody, let's say questions you in some way, or somebody tries to, doubt your capability in any way, instead of being able to take a stand for yourself or process it in the right way, you may go into overworking again, or you constantly have this need to try to prove to people that you're worthy, right? So this is a coping mechanism that you may not be even aware of. Maybe you have made this your entire identity that I'm a workaholic person, or that I love working, or I'm ambitious. Even though your ambition has started to become just a coping mechanism to not feel the pain that people may not recognize me or may not appreciate me if I'm not performing for them, right? So childhood trauma wounds, what they do is they suck your energy in the form of coping mechanisms in the background. Right? It could be any childhood trauma wound. Maybe you're a people pleaser. Maybe you have maybe you have the comparison wound. Maybe you have the mother or father wound. Maybe you're dealing with money trauma wounds. It could be anything, right? The point is that when you have unhealed childhood trauma, right? Experiences that have happened in your childhood that you have not processed and released, you've either suppressed them or you've come up with coping mechanisms of your own. They keep on sucking up your energy. And it happens in a very subliminal way. You may not be even aware of it. For example, let's say if you have an anxious attachment style. By the way, if you don't know attachment styles, I again did a wonderful boot camp for free. It is available. It's called Healing Relationship Wounds, where I've discussed how to kind of identify what patterns are kind of creating unhealthy relationships, unhealthy romantic relationships in your life, understanding your attachment styles and how to fix it. So you can go watch that too. So, for example, if you have an anxious attachment style, which means that you are somebody who gets very anxiously attached to people, which means that if they try to pull away, you get very anxious. You're always doubting whether they will stay with you or not, or you're always trying to, compensate in some way so that they stay with you, right? Now, this is your coping mechanism because you are very afraid that people will abandon you. You have the abandonment wound. Now, even though you may be in a healthy relationship, right? And your partner is not somebody who has displayed anything um, that should alarm you. But 60% of your day goes in thinking about your partner. 60% of your day goes in thinking about imaginary scenarios. If this happens, my partner will leave me. Or you know what, let me do this for him or her so that he does not leave me or she does not leave me. Or always thinking about the ways that you can be in control of the relationship because you're so afraid that your partner will leave you. Technically, the relationship is healthy, nothing bad is happening in your life, yet that coping mechanism is going on, right? Or for example, if let's say you have You have a lot of, money trauma, in the sense that your relationship with money is very toxic. Even though nothing bad is happening, you constantly keep on calculating, oh my God, do I have enough money or not? Am I making enough or not? Am I investing enough or not? So most of your energy just goes there. So instead of living your life, instead of being in the present moment, just thinking about what can go wrong. So childhood trauma wounds make you unnecessarily alert, right? And it leads to a huge wastage of your energy, which ultimately leads to exhaustion. Now let's talk about how can you come out of this exhaustion. Now the very first thing is to identify, okay? Identify what is sucking up the most amount of your energy. Now you can do a small exercise here, okay? Take a notebook and divide your page into active things that are like active activities and passive activities that could be taking up my energy. In active activities, I want you to track anything and everything that made you feel that this took my energy. It can be something as small as, let's say, making a coffee or tea for yourself, to having an argument with somebody, anything that goes in the active column, something that happened during the day. In the passive column goes in anything that was going on mentally and emotionally, right? Which means any overthinking you were doing, any anxiety you were dealing with, anything that you were planning and preparing for. I want you to write it down there. And I want you to take a look at it and see how much time, like literally, how much time are you spending in doing these activities? How much energy you are spending in doing these activities, both time and energy, and be as honest as you can about it. A lot of times I've seen people don't acknowledge the time and energy that goes into overthinking, right? For example, let's say I'm making this video right now, okay? And after this, I have something else that I have to do. Now, instead of doing this, I will, stop this video and I will start scrolling on my phone, and I'm overthinking about something that I have to buy. Or I'm just going to stare at the wall and overthink about how many failures I've had in my life. Or I'm going to overthink about, oh my God, this person does not love me, that person does not love me. That time counts. Okay. My energy is being used up. So, what amount of time and energy is going into overthinking? I want you to start tracking it and be as honest as you can. If you want, take a few days and log every hour. Like, how much time have I spent overthinking? How much time have I spent planning? How much time have I spent, daydreaming? Wherever your energy is going, track it. That will give you a clear picture of where your energy is actually going, right? Because, see, we right now are in a world where we all do white collar jobs. Okay, no, none of us are really doing physical labor. So most of the exhaustion that you're feeling is actually coming from unresolved issues from your head, right? And not acknowledging it does not do anything. The faster you acknowledge it, the faster you will arrive to a solution. Which brings me to the second point, which is you can divide your issues into 4 columns. The first is solve for, the second is let go, the third is make distance, and the fourth is inner work. Okay. Now, the solve for column are the problems that you have to actually solve for. Like, you cannot ignore them. For example, let's say if you had an argument with your partner about the division of household chores, for example, this is something that you have to solve for. If you don't solve for it, it will keep on coming back, right? And this will take up your energy again and again. So this will require you to actually have a difficult conversation with your partner or have conflicts, but you need to solve for it, right? Second is let go of. Now, let go of is where there is a resolution that has already come about for a solution, but there are some residual feelings left. For example, let's say you and your partner had a fight about something and there are some residual feelings left. Now, these are things that you have to let go of. The caveat here is that there are some things that you will be able to let go of, and there are some things that you will find difficult to let go of. The difficult part will go into the inner work section, right? The third is make distance. Now, there will be some problems in life where the answer is to just remove these things from your vicinity. For example, there is a toxic person in your life who keeps on taunting you, who keeps on making your life difficult. No amount of trying to find a solution with this person is going to do something. The solution is to make distance, like cut this person out of your life, right? Or for example, let's say you are addicted to comparing yourself from people on social media. No amount of solution is going to do something. You have to cut off social media from your life. You have to make distance from it, right? So look at the problems that you are experiencing and see what are the problems you need to let go of. What are the problems that you have to like have a solution for, and what are the things that you just have to remove from your life. The last one is inner work. This is where all the things that you're unable to solve for yourself comes, and all the childhood trauma wounds that again you're unable to solve for comes. And for this, you need to take help. You need to undergo trauma healing sessions. You need to work with a trauma informed coach. The faster you do it, the less time you will spend on thinking why you are exhausted, and the faster you'll actually be able to move on from a situation. At any point of time, our body is designed and our mind is very intelligent. It is designed to help us solve our problems. Okay. The only thing is that sometimes we have the resources for it and sometimes we don't, because believe it or not, we all need help, right? So there will be things in life, problems in life right now that you're perfectly capable of solving. And there will be problems in life that you just need a little bit of help for. The faster you acknowledge it and the faster you take the help, the less time you will spend thinking about why the exhaustion is happening. That's it from my side for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any question about this particular topic, feel free to DM me. And I also have a free community called the Safe Space, where we do free group coaching calls every month and I do Q&A every single week. If you would like to be a part of it, you can join it. Again, the link is in the feature section of my profile. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.